Professor Cheng, welcome to The Point.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a great pleasure. Let's find out about this very interesting new institution. It was initiated by 19 countries, including China, in 2022. Then in May this year, 33 countries signed up on the convention to establish the IOMed in Hong Kong, becoming its founding members. And in August this year, the convention came into effect. And in October this year, the organization was officially inaugurated, and by now, correct me if I'm wrong, 37 countries have signed up to the convention and 8 have ratified it, becoming contracting states. Am I accurate?
Well, very, except one point is that we now actually have 38 countries that have signed up. So as we speak, we have one more from the last time you looked at it, and we're expecting more signatory states to join.
Wow.
So yes, we are a very new body. We've just come into operation for just over a month, and yet we are a very important, we would think, an international body.
Congratulations. I mean, the speed is unprecedented. I want to talk about that in just a moment. But first of all, exactly what is IOMed?
The International Organization for Mediation is the first intergovernmental body that has been set up dedicated exclusively to promoting and using mediation. So we do two things primarily. One is to provide mediation services, and then the second is to carry out capacity building work. And of course, by reason of that, we also promote and reinforce the international rule of law. So far as some cases are concerned, we do 3 types of cases: the state-to-state disputes, investor-state disputes, and international commercial disputes. And then insofar as capacity building is concerned, it's also something we do both for member states as well, we hope, also for non-member states, because we wish to encourage the development of a mediation ecosystem.
As I understand from the official website, the IOMed is supposed to be an international public good on the rule of law contributed by developing countries. What exactly is the historical backdrop of the idea of IOMed?
Well, the idea is that there is a need for an alternative form of disputes to be used, and there is a number of states, in particular those from Global South, are very interested to have a say in the development of this new body, and therefore through these organizations there are, as I said, 38 signatory states now. So the idea of providing mediation as international public good actually reinforces the United Nations Charter, Article 33, which uses mediation as one of the form of dispute, peaceful settlement of disputes. And therefore the states put their heads together and say, let us establish one dedicated exclusively to that. And of course, as an international public good, we aim to provide services to all these states, as well as the nationals of these states.
Right. Well, we will talk about the developing country aspect in just a moment. But first of all, when these 19 countries came together, why have they decided to go down the path or focus on mediation, at least for the time being, instead of arbitration or, an international court, let's say? What is the difference, in other words, between arbitration, mediation, or even, between the international courts, such as criminal court, court of justice?
Well, if we look at the United Nations Charter again, Article 33, we've provided for these forms of dispute resolution. Yet for 80 years, somehow there is not a body that is dedicated exclusively to mediation. And I think that triggered these 19 countries when they made their joint statement to say, let's establish such a body. So it is filling the institutional gap. The second thing is that it also complements the existing dispute resolution mechanisms. Litigation, arbitration is at the moment still a prevailing form of dispute resolution, but the state sees the need, called upon, of course, also by the UN Charter, to establish something exclusively for mediation to complement the existing systems. And therefore, by having those two ideas, they decided that they should put together a body that serves the international community, states, investor and states, as well as their nationals doing international commercial transactions. So I think it's all very much filling this gap, complementing the existing systems. And you mentioned why is it different? I try and do a juxtaposition to illustrate that. Now, arbitration and litigation is very important in the international dispute resolution mechanism. We do not replace it, we complement it. And therefore, I try and juxtapose the features in this way. Litigation and arbitration tends to be adversarial and confrontational. That's a fact. We all know that's how it's happened. Juxtaposed against mediation, it's conciliatory and very inclusive and accommodating. Then in litigation and arbitration, there is the third party neutral, either the judge or the arbitrator would be deciding who's right and who's wrong, who win, who lose. But in mediation, the third party neutral facilitates the negotiations and bring together an outcome that is a win-win solution. In arbitration litigation, there is a jurisdiction limitation. That's a very important feature in those processes. In mediation, they tend to think out of the box, so they could extend and expand and be creative in terms of what they can do in resolving the differences and sometimes bringing other things into place as well. So I think that's three main things. But the most important thing that I think the parties or the state parties would like is to be in control of the process and the result. Third party neutral in arbitration and litigation would be the master of the procedures, but also decide who is right and who is wrong. Parties tend to prefer to be in control, truly in control of the process and the result, and settlement through mediation would allow them to do that. And so I think that's why they see the need to provide this exclusively dedicated to mediation as an alternative for parties, for disputants to choose.
That's very interesting, but why wouldn't developing countries want to set up their own mechanism for arbitration, for instance, or litigation?
Well, there are such bodies, various bodies that are in existence already, but I think the developing countries would see the need to create a more harmonious situation by which they can actually prolong and preserve their relationship. That is one of the very important features of peaceful settlement of disputes. So instead of a confrontational process, they would like a conciliatory. Instead of a black and white, you are right and you are wrong, it adopts an approach that is accommodating. I use an example of the lovely panda that we see. It's black and white, and yet it is adorable and lovely. And it's how you actually accommodate and accept each other in dealing with the things. And I think that is why developing countries sees the need of that. The current adversarial system, I think, of course, it still has to exist, but for various reasons. But I think they see the need of something that is even more positive, even more proactive, and they feel that they would own the process.
Again, I want to follow up on this a little bit. What exactly would be the difference then between a mediation center or organization set up by developing countries versus a mediation organization more contributed by developed countries?
Well, I think it's not entirely just a matter of looking at developed or developing. We are an international body. We would like to have all countries to join our organization. So at the moment, there are more developing countries in our organizations who have put together this particular convention, but we hope that this convention is open to all, so everybody can join, and we hope that this will actually enable both developed and developing countries to use mediation. We want to create a mediation ecosystem in the whole international community.
Well, there's also the Singapore International Mediation Centre, whose scope seemed to overlap with that of IOMed. What kind of difference would you like to make from that centre?
The International Organization for Mediation is established by convention with a number of states, at the moment 38, but hopefully more to be involved. There are many mediation centers and arbitration centers that are set up locally by various people around the world. So I think the local bodies that are set up in the various cities is one, and it's good because that shows that there's an ecosystem. But we are an international body. We are set up by treaty. We are therefore representing and owned by countries who have joined the convention, and we serve the community at a larger level. The disputes we handle are also slightly different. I think most of the local bodies would handle commercial. I think some international bodies handle investor state, and we handle also state to state.
That's fascinating. We'll come to that still yet. I want to talk about the principles, because that is, what guides an international organization, what guides an international cause. And it is said that your principles are voluntariness, impartiality, independence, good faith, efficiency, and cost effectiveness. Why the emphasis on voluntariness?
It's absolutely important, because for parties to wish to mediate, they need to be voluntary in coming to the negotiating table, and then they would therefore be in control of the process and the result. And we want them to be able to own the mediation in the true sense of party autonomy, and of course also the result. So when they are asked to come to the mediation table, they will come voluntarily, and if for whatever reasons they wish to stop the process, they can. And once they come to the process, a good mediator will be able to bring them to negotiate further, explore options, and open their minds with assessing their strengths and weaknesses in order to come to a settlement. So the voluntariness allows them to join, but also if they are not happy, to withdraw. But ultimately, if they consent, the result will be something that they will be very much abiding by, and therefore creating the win-win solution.
Well, this is interesting. This makes me wonder whether there is anything that that is in conformity with a lot of traditional cultural thinkings in developing countries, for instance, in China or in Africa, where you have to have an amicable atmosphere before you can truly resolve a dispute, instead of exacerbating the tensions, as we have witnessed in some cases. For instance, the South China Sea case that unfolded more than 10 years ago, which was fiercely rejected by China. And one of the key reasons is that China rejects the jurisdiction of that so-called tribunal over the case. So is the setup of such principle to avoid that kind of scenario repeating in the future?
Absolutely, because the jurisdictional limitation is a very important feature in arbitration and litigation. And therefore, in the context of mediation, we do not have that limitation, and we really rely on voluntariness. If they are willing to come to the negotiating table to mediate, that will allow them to explore all types of options, thinking out of the box and bringing into other factors in order to come to an overall outcome that would be beneficial to all concerned.
Yeah, shall we talk about the scope of IOMed to begin with? Because you mentioned it covers disputes between states, between a state and nationals of other states, as well as disputes between private parties involved in international commercial relationship. It seems quite broad. Let's talk about, for instance, disputes between states. What kind of disputes are you talking about specifically?
Well, any type of disputes that states may wish to consider. For example, if they wish to, they can bring even territorial boundary. If they wish to discuss the resources that may straddle between the boundary of two states, they can look at how they are going to share the resources and the benefits. So anything by consent between two states can be brought to the IOMed for mediation. And of course, when that comes to it, we also bear in mind that the interests of third states are not going to be affected. That is one of the requirements, of course, unless with its consent.
So basically you're saying there's not a clear exclusion, in terms of the kind of cases you can handle. There was one provision in the convention which I didn't really quite understand. Can you help explain a little bit more as it comes to disputes concerning territorial sovereignty, maritime delimitation, maritime interests, etc. Do they fall within IOMed's scope? Under what circumstances would they fall into? Because these are very sensitive issues.
It is. They are very sensitive but very important issues. So if they are by consent of the two states and they only involve those two states, those could be brought to the IOMed for mediation. However, if those disputes are going to affect the rights of third states, then the IOMed cannot accept those cases, except, of course, with the consent of also the third state. So if it's a two-party, it might become a three-party dispute or a three-party mediation.
Well, some people are saying Hong Kong, you know, with its traditional strengths as a trading and financial hub, probably means by setting this organization in Hong Kong, it probably means there was a greater focus, there would be a greater focus on financial, on investment, on commercial disputes. So from what you just said, it's not necessarily the case.
Well, it is the case. I think it is. You mentioned state-to-state disputes. That's one type. But there is also the investor-state, and I think a lot more cases would be from the commercial. So I think the fact that all these are happening, all these are cases that the IOMed would take, would actually reinforces what various countries, not just Hong Kong, are wanting to do. I mean, cities like Hong Kong are, of course, thriving on the financial development and the legal development, but they all merge together to allow the whole system to work. So it's not, it's giving people a choice to use a conciliatory means like mediation, whilst allowing the current dispute, other forms of dispute resolution to continue, in the view of course, developing business and community, and of course, resolving international state-to-state disputes as well.
That's a very big challenge because you're covering, you know, a wide scope with very sensitive issues. Who will be the mediators? How will they be chosen? Under the convention, we have two panels of mediators, one specially designated for state-to-state disputes, and another one for investor-state and commercial disputes. These mediators are designated by the states, the contracting states, but also to allow maybe non-nationals of the states or nationals of other states. There is also a panel called that is designated by the Governing Council, and the Governing Council may designate mediators from around the world, even they are non-nationals, they are not nationals of the contracting state. So it becomes a very international panel that we can use to designate mediators if the parties cannot agree. Will the parties who have brought in the disputes, will they have a say as to who they want to accept as mediators?
Absolutely. It is entirely the point of voluntariness. So we respect the party's choice. It's party autonomy. So if they wish to appoint any person that they wish that they bring in to act as mediator, the IOMed would respect that wish of the party. Party autonomy is number one. But however, only if they don't agree, then the Secretary General, myself, will have to make the appointment from the panels that we have, which is, of course, a very good source of mediators as well.
If both parties would have to, on the composition of the mediators, of the panel of mediators, before the mediation can start?
No, both parties can choose anyone that they trust and respect and wish to act as mediator to be mediator. If, however, they cannot agree one, but they still want to try mediation, the IOMed will then appoint a mediator for them, and when they do so, it will come from the two panels that we've mentioned.
How would you ensure impartiality?
The process by which the mediator is to be appointed will require them to disclose any conflict of interest or any doubts that people may have as to their impartiality. So the mediator will do that. We will encourage the parties to also make sure that the mediator is appointed do not have any conflict of interest with them as well. And so that is very much an important factor. We also have bring into our rules, which is on our web now, the code of conduct for mediators, which again remind them of the importance of impartiality.
Let's talk about the outcome of the mediations. I understand from the convention that they are non-binding, legally non-binding. Do I understand it wrongly?
Well, let me try and put it this way. The mediated settlement agreement has a binding effect on the parties because they are, like any contract, agreed upon by the parties as to what they will do. Now, that particular binding effect is more contractual. However, the international community have already established a convention for the enforcement of the mediated settlement agreement, which we sometimes call the Singapore Convention. Mm-hmm. That convention for the allows for court to enforce this mediated settlement agreements. So there is one backdrop there, one sort of fallback there. There is also another thing that is in the convention, and that is amongst the contracting states, we are going to negotiate a protocol that will allow the enforcement of all these mediated settlement agreements amongst the contracting states. So we hope that that will help reinforce the enforceability of the settlement agreement. But having said all that, let me come back to the point about mediation. Because it's voluntary, parties can agree, or they can also say, I don't want to settle. So where they want to settle, there is hardly any need for any enforcement mechanisms, unlike, for example, arbitration, where someone is saying you win or you lose, you are right or you are wrong. One person may be unhappy and they may not want to comply with it. But for mediation, we expect that to be a rare occasion, if at all, and that is more a backup to ensure the use of mediation can be spread even wider.
So what are the challenges you are faced with? What keeps you awake, let's say, at night when you step into this new job?
Well, I think the challenges is, first of all, raising the visibility of the International Organization for Mediation. So I thank you for inviting me to your program. That's one thing. Secondly, I think is letting people know more about mediation. When I say know more about mediation, I mean knowing what it is, and also knowing how to use it, and of course building up mediators who will help parties to settle their disputes. So that is part of the capacity building thing we have to think what we're going to do. The third, of course, very practically, is to bring in cases. So we have to encourage people to put in clauses that uses International Organization for Mediation, and that will include commercial as well as investor state. We hope that the bilateral investment treaties, the BITs of states and the FTAs with investment chapters would be more prone to using mediation as an option and not just arbitration. So it's an alternative we'd like them to add to.
Well, as I mentioned, right now the signals seem to be very positive, right? So many countries signed up in a short matter of time, and the Secretariat is up and running. Why do you think there is such a sense of urgency among these countries to have this mechanism up and running as soon as possible?
Well, I think the world is in a very interesting stage at the moment. There are a lot of differences. Sometimes views get entrenched. By having a body that brings into effect inclusivity, multilateralism, and of course accommodating and understanding each other through dialogue is a very important feature, I think, for states and for, in fact, all parties in the world, everybody in the world. So I think there is an urgency right now to really push this mediation into the minds of everyone involved so that they can remember to use this conciliatory and positive means of resolving differences.
Yeah, well, a devil's advocate question, because there are people who are skeptical of either the intention or the prospect, of whether you can mediate successfully. Some people would say, look, it's located in China, which they do not believe has a good culture, rule of law for whatever reasons, and they even attack China very often for, for various reasons. So, from your perspective, how would you respond to these people? And is it a liability or strength that this is an initiative promoted by China and 19 other developing countries?
Well, I think to dissolve this myth that you've said people are carrying, I think we have to very categorically point out that China initiated it, but the ultimate joint declaration involved 18 states or 19 states altogether, and ultimately now we have 38 states who have signed up this convention. No one single country sort of dictates how the IOMed is operating. We've now been set up. I'm the Secretary General with Deputy Secretary General and staff, and our staff are going to be employed from around the world internationally. So, we will be doing that, and it's an international body. The fact that we are housed and placed in Hong Kong SAR, part of China, is because China is willing to contribute to this development, and Hong Kong very generously allows us to put our headquarters in one of the heritage buildings in Hong Kong. That's the same with most, if not all, international organizations. Somebody will have to house them somehow, and we're housed there. But we do not, therefore, be in favor of one or the other. We are an independent international body that addresses the international community at large. Member states or non-member states are welcome to participate in our activities, and we resolve the disputes not by us, but by the mediator that they would have chosen. And only if they can't choose, we will then designate or appoint it from the designated mediators on the panels. So all this myth, I think, has to go. And I really hope through this visibility and raising awareness, we'll be able to let them know that we are here to serve the international community.
Let the facts tell for themselves.
Very well said.
Finally, do you have a motto? Do you have a truism? Is there a calligraphy or a painting in your office that you look at and remind yourself from time to time?
I think it's a very, very important thing that to sort of reflect what we do. I would like to say that one of the things that we do in sort of one sentence is bridging impasse and opportunities through mediation.
Bridging impasse and opportunities through mediation. That's something as food for thought we can contemplate on. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Professor Cheng, and congratulations for your appointment as the first Secretary General of the International Organization of Mediation.
Thank you very much.